And I would listen to like the Sunday school lessons. They'd talk about apostates. And I'd be like, they're talking about me.
What is that?
So an apostate, someone who leaves,
I
who
see.
doesn't believe in the core doctrine, that kind of thing. And who, when you are shunned from the tribe, so to speak, it's easier to kind of make you look like you're a terrible person than having any validity in what you've studied.
Got it. Thank you.
So not that they were saying, Amy, you are an apostate, because no one knew, because this was still a secret at the time in my world.
Yep.
My husband knew, I questioned, my sister, I think, knew, but I kept it very tight because it's that fear of losing tribe. And I loved these people. Like they were my people. I didn't know anything different. And so I did that until I could no longer do it, because I would sit in church on Sundays and I'd hear the songs, and it just was very triggering, and it just felt like I would pass what was called the primary room, which primary would be like children's nursery or where children receive lessons. And I'd hear all these songs, and I'd hear the kids singing these songs. I'm like, that's brainwashing.
Hello there, it is Irene Lyon, and welcome to this interview chat that I have with Amy Logan. Amy is a friend from 10 years ago. We met almost 10 years to this month in California. We were at a long weekend mastermind with a mutual business mentor. We were both just starting out with our work online, and her story was just so amazing to me. She was in the middle, or had just come out of, what she called and calls a faith crisis. She is someone who was raised Mormon and lived that world and realized she didn't want to be in it anymore. And so we talk about her awakening, her decisions to leave, or her decision to leave, how difficult that was, the process that she went through, and how now she works with others who are in the same boat. I think that this conversation is not just for those who are in faith crisis or who are what she calls in religious freeze. So there's fight, flight, freeze. So we talk about what that is, religious freeze, from her perspective. This conversation is for anyone, I believe, who is wanting to leave something. It doesn't have to be a faith. It could be a person. It could be a job. It could be a community. It could be even a way of living, a way of life. So enjoy this conversation. It was a fun one to have. And somewhere near this audio or video, depending on how you're watching or listening to this, I have links so that you can learn more about Amy, say hi to her, and follow her work. Thanks for listening, everyone, and enjoy this conversation.
I was raised Mormon. And so my whole life was very much framed around growing up Mormon and all things Mormon. And if you know anything about Mormon culture, it is life. It affects everything that you do. Everything is the culture, their friends, the people you hang out with, for me, was very Mormon centric. So Mormons believe we lived in a pre-earth life before we came to this earth, that we came to this earth with our families, that we kind of predestined who we'd be with. That's part of the philosophy. And then they believe, see, it's still in my psyche.
No, that's fine.
That when you die, you live forever with your family.
Got it.
I mean, that's probably it in simplicity. They are Christian. And I still defend that. There are people who say Mormons aren't really Christian. And I'm like, well, they do believe in Jesus Christ. They do believe in the atonement. I think when you get to brass tacks, comparing some of the doctrine, Mormon doctrine can get a little different, where they believe they can be gods of their own world. Their polygamy works its way through into the eternities, things like that, which would be definitely different from what I refer to as mainstream Christianity.
Okay, cool. Just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's very simplified. I did all the things. I was on the Mormon path, as I like to call it. And it's outlined for you, because Mormons believe they are the one true church, the one true way to get back to God. And anyway, long story short, I did get married. I went to school. I graduated. We had children. And, married a Mormon man and did the Mormon thing.
Followed that path.
I did it all. Yeah. And I guess around the early 2000s, I just started having little doubts, like something's not right. Something's not right.
Right.
But, you know, you're just supposed to keep the faith, and you're just supposed to keep doing what you're doing and reading your scriptures and praying, which I'd spent my whole life doing.
Yeah.
And I just had these little things that would come up. And I would say for me, the biggest one was in 2004 in Utah. They were having their first marriage, that marriage can be more than just a man and a woman.
Okay.
Okay, so the kind of the equality issue. For me, that was like, no, their marriage isn't affecting my marriage. Like, they can do what they want. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I raised my voice, even to talk to my immediate family, it was like, well, that's not according to God's plan, and on and on and on.
Mm.
So I didn't have the confidence to keep speaking my voice. Like, I just kind of felt like it just kind of kept getting shut down.
Right.
Anyway, it's fast forward now, it's 2006, and it's a Saturday, and I'm cleaning my house, and the kids are playing outside, and my husband's doing something in the garage, and my girlfriend calls me, and she's like, Amy, you're right. All the things you doubted, you're right, you're right. And she just dumped all this information on me. And I remember I shut my door. I went into my office. I had a home business at the time.
Yeah.
Shut the door, and I just listened. And I was 36. And it was the first time that I thought, Amy, you're a grown-up. This has been nagging at you for at least 6-7 years. I gave myself permission to start my inquiry.
Got it.
And that was I had no idea the door I was opening. Talk about a rabbit hole. Like, you know, you don't know what's coming. And I found out as I researched and studied, like I think I have a master's degree now in Mormon history. I mean, not really, but I went down so many rabbit holes and read books, and I couldn't get enough information in. And I was thinking, why do I not know this? Like, I was the good person all my life that did all the things and gave my life to the church.
So what you were researching from that Saturday on was not information that you were taught through your schooling's church.
No. I felt completely betrayed. I was angry. I was scared, because who am I without the Mormon story? Like, what does that mean? All the decisions I've made up to that point. And I remember pulling into my driveway one day. Kids are at school, husband's at work, and I pull in, and this is after months and months of just research. And it was the moment, I call it the moment, because I pulled into my driveway, and I was probably secretly drinking coffee. That was another thing. You're not supposed to drink coffee.
No caffeine.
And I had the moment where I accepted that it wasn't true for me. And in that moment was a complete, I don't even know how to explain it. The pain that I felt, the void that I felt, the like realization that my whole life was built on this thing that wasn't true. And I just started bawling, and I got out of my car, and I walked into the house, and there's my sweet dog. And I just like fell on the front room floor, and I just wanted the earth to swallow me up. I thought that would be easier than whatever's going to come next.
Wow.
It was a paradigm shift. And I wanted to flip the switch back. I'm like, just go back. It was fine.
This story doesn't have to be connected to the church or faith. That this happens when we question even our family system, our education system, what everything out in all the systems. I'm not going to name them all. I think we're all adults here. We can name them.
We can list them off.
These are what we've been told is true. And we just either we go into it and we're wired into that. And some people stay and others question, like you did. Some jump back and some question, and they break out into their own world. That's not to say one is better or worse. It's just, this is kind of happening all over, not just in the church world and the faith world.
And I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. And I think a lot of people are waking up to that and going, whatever the formula was before is no longer working.
No, I agree. I completely agree.
This is basically the crux of all my work. Like, is that autonomy and stepping into your power, which means you're going to own all your own emotions. Which means, because a lot of people who leave the church are so afraid to tell grandma or to tell mom and dad or to tell siblings because they are afraid of what those people will think and what they may do or say. But the truth is, we never know what someone's thinking. I mean, unless they literally tell us.
Yeah.
But we stay in religious freeze or life freeze because we are so afraid of what someone may do or think about us that we create the fear ahead of time.
Yeah.
And when you step into your own power and your own voice, it is speaking your truth, which means I am no longer a member of this church, or I am leaving this relationship, or I am putting up boundaries within my family. The people that you are separating yourself from or wanting to create boundaries, you don't even have to separate yourself, but speak your truth, is they get to manage their own mind.
It's their stuff.
That's their stuff. What happens is, someone else is going to have thoughts and feelings.
That's
it's a given. We're human. We do this.
Yeah.
But that is on them.
Yeah.
And the more, even if you just take baby steps into that, you feel more free than ever. Because we stay bound by what other people may or may not think.
Yeah.
And we can't get unstuck. And if this life is about becoming the best version of ourselves and experiencing all the emotions, like, listen, if the worst thing you have to experience is fear, it's, I don't want to say it's just a feeling, because I know it can be paralyzing. Believe me, I've felt it.
Yeah.
But if you can feel that and move forward anyway, the fear gets less the next time and the next time. And the
It
next
does.
time.
Capacity is built.
Yeah.
So you had your moment on the floor, you broke down, you saw the world completely differently.
Yep.
What occurred after that that led you to where you are now in the year 2020?
It's crazy, because when we first met, I don't even think I'd started my YouTube channel. So
no, it was fresh.
Yeah, it was very fresh. And I just needed to start sharing my story. So that's how that happened. But for a few years, I just decided, okay, I'm just going to make the best of this. And so I kept going to church with my family and who, when you are shunned from the tribe, so to speak, it's easier to kind of make you look like you're a terrible person than having any validity in what you've studied.
Got it. Thank you.
So not that they were saying, Amy, you are an apostate, because no one knew, because this was still a secret at the time in my world. My husband knew, I questioned, my sister, I think, knew, but I kept it very tight because it's that fear of losing tribe. And I loved these people. Like they were my people. I didn't know anything different. And so I did that until I could no longer do it, because I would sit in church on Sundays and I'd hear the songs, and it just was very triggering. And it just felt like I would pass what was called the primary room, which primary would be like children's nursery or where children receive lessons. And I'd hear all these songs, and I'd hear the kids singing these songs. I'm like, that's brainwashing. It's conditioning.
Yeah.
It's conditioning them to, like, the songs would be like, I hope they call me on a mission. I mean, all the songs about follow the prophet, like just very much allegiance to the prophet and the hierarchy of the church. And
Got it.
And so it's that whole seeing things in a different light. It's like, what was kind of cute and fun when even I was a primary president, like that was another thing I did. I was over all those beautiful children, you know, and just teaching the lessons and teaching the songs and doing all of that.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to be sitting up at 2:00 in the morning, bawling your eyes out because you feel very alone. You feel separate from the tribe that you once were with.
Yeah.
And it's a very lonely path. I refer to it as a faith crisis, but it's really a life crisis, because it's not like you're like, oh, I'm just not going to go to church anymore. It's like, no, you fundamentally into your core change.
Yeah.
And you can't put the pieces back to make it look like it did before.
No, or if you try, you're going to have a crazy time, mental breakdown, or you'll get sick of some sort.
To go to the temple, which as a Mormon, you're encouraged to go probably monthly at least. So this is how multi-layered this is.
Yeah.
So you go for the first time for yourself, like I did when I was 20.
Okay.
You continue to go, but you're doing it for and in behalf of someone who has died. So you're going in proxy, because Mormons believe that if you have died and you haven't had the opportunity to accept the gospel, that if someone does your work here on earth, meaning temple work, that on the other side, you can then choose to accept it or not. So Mormons are
Okay.
busy doing work for the dead in their temples.
Got it.
Yeah. That's why, I mean, this is a huge box. We can talk for at least a week straight.
I'm sure we could. Okay. Okay.
So to go to the temple, you
Mhm.
have to be worthy,
Mhm.
and you have to go have a meeting with your bishop, and he
Right.
asks you a series of, I think, about 15 questions.
Right.
I needed a new temple recommend. At the time, you had to get one every year, and it
Okay.
would last for a year. When it expired, you go get another one. I think they've since made it you only have to go every year. But I couldn't, at this point, I couldn't answer the questions honestly,
No.
because they ask you if you believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. Do you believe basically in all the tenets of the church?
Right.
And I remember the bishop got to about the third question, and I just answered it honestly. And he closed the book and he said, very kind and loving, this is a great man. But he said, I think, Amy, I want you to go home and read the Book of Mormon and pray more.
Oh.
And I remember thinking, I've spent my whole fucking life being loyal and valiant and chaste and, the virtuous woman, like doing all these things. And now I can't even get a temple recommend because I'm having doubts. Well, I have some doubts, but yeah, I pretty much believe it. And he said, well, doubts are of the devil. And I remember thinking, what? Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, I'm not what someone would consider a transgression or something. And so that was a tough one for me. So now I'm here having this other temple recommended and I don't get it.
Right.
And so there was a wedding to go to and I couldn't go in because I don't have the temple recommend, and Mormons get married in a temple. And so that was the first time that I thought, well, all right, here I go. I'll stand outside and wait for all the people to come out, and I'll hug the bride and groom, and I'll just be as gracious as I can. But when you are the person who's no longer worthy, your brain shoots off all these judgments that people are going to have, because if you can't go, for sure it's because you messed up morally, or you were drinking alcohol or something that you're not supposed to do. The conditioning of having a worthiness interview, and this is where we can get to some of the conversations around religious trauma and religious freeze, is because it plants in your head this whole thing that you're never really worthy enough.
Yeah.
You can't be doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's conditions for being accepted.
Yeah. And I didn't think about it as a youth going through, but the concept of being worthy, I mean, a lot of people struggle that in and out of a religion, but
of course,
when you have it compounded, you have to go have this worthiness interview that a man is determining whether you're worthy to be able to participate fully in the church.
Yeah.
That has some psychological effects.
It's a big hit.
I wouldn't say I had shame around it, but I didn't know what to do. Like, what do you do when you don't believe and everyone does? Like, my whole family, I lived in Utah for 30 years. Like I said, I left the day after I graduated from high school and I stayed until 2018, basically.
Yeah.
And so when my family was in a span of about 35 minutes, lived about 35 minutes of each other in different directions, but about that was everything. That was life. Like, that is who we did Sunday dinners with. It's who we went to family parties with, and just all the things. And so I just kept it quiet. And I am more of an introvert by nature. I'm just kind of an observer. I don't need to be the center of attention. So I definitely didn't want that spotlight on me. But at the same time, I felt this struggle with, but I need to speak my voice. My voice is important too.
Yes.
But it's hard when you know all the things they're going to say. And a lot of the scuttlebutt, so to speak, about leaving the church is that you wanted to sin, or you were too lazy, or you were offended by something someone said. And it's like, if it was only that, like, I could get over that. At that time, I was teaching the 16, 17, 18-year-old young women.
Wow.
And I remember there was and I was already like teaching things, and I'm like, but I don't believe this anymore. So I was having this struggle. And it was one lesson on the law of chastity and keeping yourself morally pure and all of that. And I remember thinking, but I want to tell them that sex can be fun and healthy, and you don't have to have all these and I just knew that this was not aligning.
No.
I mean, and all in proper time. It's not like I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
like whip out sex toys or anything, but
No.
it just
Again,
felt
we're
like,
human, we're animals, right?
yeah,
That urge is there.
having sex out of wedlock is second to murder.
Yeah.
That is a teaching.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
common across so many
yeah,
religions.
and that's like nuts.
Yes.
And so I would say it was probably about 2008. I just couldn't go anymore.
Yeah.
And I just started feeling a disconnect with that life.
Yeah.
There was some guilt and shame around that too, because
of course
we had built a beautiful life together, my husband and I, and had two wonderful boys. And but I wanted something different. And so I remember having in 2009, I had my name removed from the church records, which is a process in and of itself. You have to get it notarized and you have to go through this huge like removal. But I remember feeling like that was the first step to me taking my power back. No, I am no longer Mormon. I do not believe in any of this. And for me, that was my first, like, no, this is my voice now. Now I will be thinking differently.
And some never have that.
Right.
They never know what it's like to be sovereign, their own person, their individuality, their own life force energy.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. So if we turn to the work you do now with folks, working with, the word that caught my eye on your site was religious freeze.
Yeah.
Because in the world of trauma, we know there's fight, flight, freeze, and my listeners, viewers know that really well. So what's religious freeze for you, and how you've seen it, work with it, felt it yourself?
Yeah, I think it's so connected to trauma and being so afraid to do something because you're going to get in trouble. But there's so many rules. And so you're always like, am I doing this wrong? Am I doing, like you need to stay on the path because you're supposed to be perfect like God. And there's just this constant, never good enough, never perfect enough.
To live in that soup of energy. That's, in my opinion, that is very damaging to the human soul, the human spirit, our purpose, our life force energy, as you said. And as we know from the research, when that freeze is embedded into a person, that ends up in illness later in life. Chronic, mental, physical, autoimmune.
Yeah. And I would say, and I don't have the study in front of me, but Utah is known for having the highest rate of antidepressant distribution, especially among women in the church.
I believe that.
And so it aligns with exactly what you're saying, because there's this thing in the back of your head that you're not going to be good enough. And it's kind of keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. And are you doing things perfectly? And I think most Mormons would be like, well, I don't feel like I need to be perfect. But I think it's this undertone that, actually you kind of do. The prophet, and I'm going to not quote this perfectly, but he said something along the lines of, a life without God is full of fear. A life with God is peaceful. Something along those lines. And that keeps you stuck in religious freeze.
Right.
I think, because if you are so scared, and this is why I was so scared to come out, is because I was like, but it's a fearful place, the world. Like, we're taught to be in the world, but not of it. And that people who leave the church go down and like end up being heroin addicts in a gutter somewhere. I mean, like, it's just painted this terrible picture. And even though that is extreme, it's still, you're still taught, like they just were this past weekend, that a life without God is
life of fear.
Yeah. And I think that keeps people tethered to the church, because in their head, which I did for many years, I thought, well, then I don't want to be scared. But the truth is, when you are in a religion that has kind of all these rites of passage and wants you to stay on the one true narrow road, it's very scary to step out of that.
Well, it's death.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what our primitive brain does, is it's like, I'm going to die because I don't know what to do. And so religious freeze to me is that space of, like, where I spent several years staying, but not believing. And I thought, I'll just toe the line because it's not terrible.
No.
Mormons are great people, and I still believe that. They're
Yeah.
kind, they're good-hearted, they're
Yeah.
Christ-like, they want to
Yeah.
help their community, like they're
Yeah.
good people.
Yeah.
But most, I don't think, know the history of their church. And so once you start questioning that, you can't help but then question the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Well, it's like you've taken that red pill, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of, once you take that in, it's really hard to spit it back out.
Yeah, you can't see it.
No.
You can't see it the way you did before, for sure.
Well, and that connection with, if you don't believe this, it means death. Again, it's embedded in our nervous system physiology
Mm-hmm.
with children. Again, religion or no religion, if I don't follow the rules of mom and dad to the T, even though it's harming me internally, I might die.
Right. Yeah.
Even though they probably won't. The primitive unconscious
Mm-hmm.
autonomic brain is like,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I can't survive out there in the world on my own because I'm 5.
Right.
So I'm gonna, even though they
Yeah.
don't know that intellectually, they will conform
Right.
to keep the peace. And in
Mm-hmm.
doing that, we start to create what I would call the personality versus the individuality.
Mm-hmm.
Literally the mask goes on,
Yeah.
the armor goes on.
Mm-hmm. For me, I feel a bigger connection with humanity
Mm-hmm.
now than I did before.
Mm-hmm.
Because before, when I was in the church, I felt like this is us and the Mormons have it right. And not that I didn't love people. I loved all types of people, but I just felt like we had the truth. And so I'll just stay on this path and do it. And so now, I mean, I'm open to whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the answers. I don't know if there's a God or not a God,
Yeah.
but I feel very comfortable not knowing. But when you can get to the other side, like, I don't even know how I did, but when you get to the other side, it's actually exciting.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, what else can I challenge?
Yeah.
What else did I believe that I didn't,
Yeah.
that I don't anymore? Like, where else? And then it becomes exciting because you question everything.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of like it's true free. It's real, not true freedom. It's freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.